Okay. Hello, my name is Victoria Reeve, and welcome to my TED Talk presentation. I'm going to be answering the question of how does trauma that the EMTs and paramedics face at work affect their personal lives. So to set the stage, I'm going to show you a video of a veteran firefighter paramedic who worked for 31 years in the Colorado Springs Fire Department, so pretty close to home. And while I show you this video, he talks about his experiences in the field and his traumas and all of that. And while I show this video to you guys, I'd like you guys to pay attention just to how his emotions are when he is talking throughout the video. Should play right away. Yeah. Should I pause? I'll back up. There is like 3 swear words in this, so I could have bleeped it out, but it was time and I'm not
Try again. I got the volume turned up now.
Okay. I hope it doesn't
People think that we as paramedics, that we can just like fix every fucking thing. Oh, call the paramedics. Oh, the paramedics are coming. They're gonna fix this shit. It doesn't work that way. But can you imagine, just as a normal person, somebody hands you a baby with their brain just squished out to the side of their head, and they say, "Help me." Nobody can help them. Nobody can help that baby. Nobody can help that person, and so the gig as a paramedic, a firefighter, and a paramedic and stuff, we're not bulletproof. It's kind of like the military. I think I have never been in war. I've never experienced war, but the shit we see, God. I saw a guy one time that had shot himself, bang, through the head, and then he fell over sideways, and his head landed on a headrest, and his head elongated, and he looked like a Halloween pumpkin. It was really bizarre. Paramedics, yeah, we save lives, but it's such a small percentage.
So, obviously, he describes a lot of extraordinary circumstances and stuff that we should never have to see. And can you imagine how he felt in this? You can kind of see it when he pauses and starts really processing it and remembering it and going through it. You can see the sadness, the helplessness, the fear. It's really hard. And to think that you're in a career of life-saving and you come upon this harsh realization that you can't save everyone and you save less people than you see, almost. So Tim Casey eventually committed suicide on July 31st of 2016 after he was diagnosed with PTSD and was in his own home in his car was running, and exhaust was, and he was inhaling the exhaust while the car was shut and the garage was shut. So that's unfortunate. And unfortunately, it's not an uncommon story. A 2015 Fitch Associates survey program reported that suicide in EMS is widespread. As you can see here, they found that out of 2,200 participants, they found that 37% of them had contemplated suicide, and that is just based off of, and that is almost 10 times the amount of the national average for adults, which is 3.7. And then, on the other side, 6.6% of all those participants had actually committed suicide, compared to the national average of just 0.5 adults. So it is super prevalent and super high. And so this next slide kind of gets a little graphic. Just wanted to warn you guys, if you have a light stomach or something, you might want to close your eyes and I'll just tell you when to open it. But so why are these suicide rates so high? And that is because of exposure trauma. So yeah, I decided to show this because these are things that they see every day in their work, and it's not uncommon. So I'm going to change the slide, it's good now. So trauma is defined as a deeply distressing or disturbing experience, which is more psychological trauma or mental trauma, or physical injury, which is physical trauma. And EMS personnel experience both of these, and it sucks. And within within trauma, there are two subcategories, which is primary trauma and secondary trauma. So primary trauma is when a traumatic experience is experienced, witnessed, or confronted firsthand that causes such intense fear, helplessness, or horror, such as sexual assault, combat, abuse, terrorism, mass violence, and even things like accidents and natural disasters. So this would be the trauma that you experience from a loved one dying or from abuse, and that something you personally experience. Secondary trauma, on the other hand, is trauma that one gets from indirect means of exposure through first-hand account or narrative of a traumatic event. So this isn't directly happening to you, but you see firsthand the aftermath of what trauma does to someone, or you hear about it enough for it to affect you. So this commonly happens to counselors on account of their patients listening to all the horrible things that happen to them, and therapists. And in this instance, it also happens to EMS personnel when they arrive on scene to, say, a motorcycle accident or to a car crash or whatever, and they see all the cries of helplessness and people bleeding and dying and bloody appendages everywhere. So just very traumatic things. And unfortunately, for example, in Tim Casey, the guy we just watched, earlier in the video, he described an event where, I didn't show it to you guys because it's too long, where he came upon a scene of a mother who had accidentally backed over the head of her child. And its brains were all spilling out, as he very briefly described. But he gets on scene, and this hysterical mother runs up to him and thrusts the baby in his arms, and his brains are just falling out onto the concrete, and she screams, "Save my baby." And there's really nothing he could have done. He describes the baby was still breathing when he received it, but there was nothing he could have done. How do you tell that to that mother? How do you deal with that? So another example of potential trauma that EMTs face is, for example, if they get on scene and they are told that it is unsafe by police officers, or basically that they cannot go onto the scene because of a safety hazard, yet they might be able to hear the screams of the people who need that help and feel completely helpless because they cannot do anything and are just kind of stuck there. And then there's also that doubt that they may feel where they think, well, maybe if I just had gotten there a little bit faster, or done a little bit faster, or done this a little harder, and maybe it would have worked, and maybe I would have saved them. So that doubt also kills them. And an example of this was a paramedic mother of a child, so this was especially hard for her, came upon a scene of a drunk, a baby, or a 3-year-old kid, daughter of the person driving, was thrown out of the back of the vehicle as her drunk mother took a turn too sharp, and, well, then her baby died, and she was just, which was frustrating to the mother, because she's like, it's your kid, you should be more responsible. And so this was her account of it. She's like, I ran the entire call through my mind again and again, critiquing everything I had done, everything I hadn't done. I questioned myself if there was anything I missed, anything I could have done differently. And I knew I had done everything I could and had given her every chance to live, but I still couldn't make a difference. So that's pretty heartbreaking. And that is really hard for people. So these people encounter stress every single day of their life because it is their job to go on scene and then help them, get them to the hospital, then leave and go on another instance, help them. So it's a continuous cycle, and there's almost no break in between. And in a paper I read by Raymond B. Flannery of treating psychological and stress in first responders, he recognized that even if counseling were sought, the reality of the work would leave limited time for processing one critical incident before a second call of assistance at the next critical incident is received. So they don't have time to process that stress and the instance that they were in, because they have to be constantly ready, and that doesn't leave good time to get better and healthier and improve. So what are the effects of this trauma? What are they trying to get healthier? What does it do to them? And, well, it's PTSD, one of them. And PTSD is a condition of persistent mental, emotional stress occurring as a result of injury or severe psychological shock. So some of the PTSD symptoms are they have this constant vivid recall of the experience, they have sleep disturbances, and they become emotionally detached from the world and others. So it's commonly associated with soldiers, yet it's very prevalent in the EMS field. So, and Samantha Dutton, there's some of the stuff that I totally skipped over that. But Samantha Dutton, a PhD MSW student, or Samantha Dutton has a PhD MSW, and it went to the University of Phoenix, and she did a study where she found that 85% of first responders had experienced symptoms related to mental health issues, and 1/3 of them were formally diagnosed with either depression or PTSD. So it is very high in EMTs. And with PTSD, anxiety can develop, depression can develop, and coping mechanisms, unhealthy coping mechanisms such as drinking and drugs can develop, and so on. And it affects the person who's experiencing that, the EMS personnel, very deeply. The thing is, it doesn't only affect them, but it also affects their family members as well. So it just continues spreading, and it puts significant stress on their family. Therefore, this stress, there was a study done by Jaddeep Bains, the PhD, and his team at the Hotchkiss Brain Institute in the Cummings School of Medicine, and he found that stress transmitted from others can change the brain in the same way that real stress does. So, families, therefore, stress experienced by the EMS personnel is directly translated almost to the family members and causes really, it could cause mental illnesses such as depression alongside of that EMS personnel. So it just continuously spreads. And there was this study in that Cheryl Rager had done in trauma, bringing home the trauma, her paper, and she found that she talked to many different spouses of paramedics on many different backgrounds, and had just really trying to figure out what the effect of their spouse being in EMS field has on them. And she found that many of the families accounted that they were very worried that their spouse was maybe caught with a violent victim, or they're worried because they're always driving at high speeds in usually dangerous conditions, and they even are worried in real instances where there is an HIV infection or flesh-eating disease or SARS, and they come home and they have to be quarantined for a large amount of time, and they get separated, and it just messes up everyone's schedule and messes with everyone's mental state when that happens. So it's really hard on families, that she found. And it's especially hard on small children, because how do you explain to a 2-year-old or maybe a 5-year-old that they may not see, their parents' home is going to be non-existent for 42 hours, that they're not going to see them for that much time in a week and consistently? How do you explain to them that they may not be able to go to their family member and hug them or touch them because they may be infected with some disease or illness? It's hard. Another thing that EMTs and paramedics experience and have a hard time with is there's this negative stigma around getting help in their work field. There is this negative stigma associated with getting help, which then causes them to refrain from getting help that they really need for fear of being disrespected or seen as weak by their coworkers, or for fear of being seen as unfit to do their job and therefore unsuitable for a promotion. They're scared that they might lose their job if they go seek help. So, in 2016, actually, there was this study done. Well, yeah, there's some of them. But the National Association of Emergency Medical Technicians, where they had gotten 4,220 paramedics, EMS personnel, managers, EMTs, and medical directors to rate the following statement: my agency considers mental health important. 55% of them agreed or strongly disagreed with the statement, while 45 disagreed or strongly disagreed. So they are really close together, yet it should be a lot more agreeing and there should be a lot less disagreeing. And there are even some comments of dismay and disgust, as some participants commented, "The agency I work for sees mental health as a weakness. If you ask for help, you become verbally abused by coworkers, supervisors, and station managers. I needed help, and I was told that's why women don't belong in EMS. They're overly emotional." Which, to me, kind of pisses me off, and just like, really? But unfortunately, that's a common relationship that these coworkers in EMS have when it comes to dealing with these mental illnesses and talking about that. So another person also said that their management sees it almost as a joke, as they said mental health is a joke to management. They still operate on the philosophy that if you can't handle it, you're in the wrong line of work. So it is a really real issue, and the support from the coworkers is very important, as we found in a study done in 2002 by the Journal of Emergency Medical Services. They found that with support and encouragement of peers, 52 EMS personnel were more likely to go get the help that they needed, while if they had no encouragement or support, only 30 of them would go. So we see that it is very significant that they have that support and they have that encouragement from their peers and coworkers and management, and that they know that they're in a safe place relatively. And not all agencies are this way, don't get me wrong. Like, I interned with the Durango Fire Department, and we went on this call where I got to see my first dead person. And he was dead on arrival, and he had some, lividity going on, so that's, blood pooling in the chest. And we got back, and they had a big debrief about what happened and making sure that everyone was okay. And then I was personally confronted and asked if I was okay, and that they made sure that I knew that if I ever needed help to come to them. So they were super supportive. And there are people also in this survey that found their companies to be supportive too. As one said, "My company takes mental health seriously. I'm proud of my agency. I had to use and then another one was, "I had to use mental health resources after pediatric trauma code. It took a few months for me to fully deal with it, but services provided helps greatly." So it's not a loss. There are people working on improving it, yet it's almost not. There should be more improvement being made. And whoops, you're not supposed to see that yet. And later we found that in the same study that they're not always
1 minute.
Oh shoot, help is not always available because their counselor they go to may not know their situation and may not know how to treat them. Like, there's this one counselor they went to, and she advised them to leave their EMS job because of this, and they don't understand that. So anyways, there is a problem, as I've told you in the last 20 minutes, and it does affect our EMTs and paramedics negatively, to the point where there is a positive correlation with mental health illnesses and with suicide in EMTs and paramedics. And I've reminded you that as superhuman as they are still human. And as fellow humans, I think that it is time that we begin to help them care for themselves, as the EMS personnel have always been there for us in our times of most need to help care for us. So I think we start doing that now.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you. Oh, one more thing. This slide. If you guys are inspired to go donate some change or anything, or just learn more about the mental health illness, go to Code Green campaign.